separated. It's a challenge family judges increasingly face, and now a study at Western University is looking to provide guidance for judges by looking at cases in which divorced parents are in conflict over how to address their child's gender identity questions. Joining me to talk about this, Rick Patika. He's an associate at Shulman Family Law. Rick, welcome back to the show. Thanks for doing this.
Hi, Barb. Thank you for having me.
So interesting about this study, do you feel with your practice and what you have seen, there actually is a need for maybe more information, more training around this topic?
I think so, Barb, and I just want to be clear. I haven't had a case so far with dealing with a transgender issue, but I mean, in the few cases that I've come across, this is an emerging area, and there is very little case law precedent on this. And I find even in reviewing those cases, judges are treading cautiously on how they approach these cases.
Well, and I can imagine that you could probably enlighten us. I can only imagine the small things that parents sort of disagree over when they're deciding about what everyone believes is the best interest of their child. This is a massive, massive issue, and it is something I think that the judges perhaps should be more informed about.
And it's true, though. I mean, and this is really a custodial decision, and custodial in the sense that it's a decision, a major medical decision affecting a child, and the child's decision on whether they're having gender concerns or gender issues, and whether they should change from their assigned gender at birth is a huge decision that. There needs to be some uniformity between both parents, and in divorce cases where parents are bickering or they can't get along, it becomes even more distressing for the child.
How do the child's rights factor into a court decision?
So the child's rights under the Children's Law Reform Act. When a court is looking at determining the best interest of the child, one of the factors that a court looks at are the views and preferences of the child.
Okay.
But of course, that has to be taken into consideration with the age of the child. And obviously, the older a child, the more the views and preferences are going to be a factor that a court's going to consider. They're not determinative of themselves, but a court's going to allot some weight to those views and preferences.
You are a family law lawyer. How would you approach a situation? I'm not sure if you can tell us, but I'm just sort of seeing if I can ask you this. It may or may not apply, but if you had a case where one parent believed very strongly in something about the child, in this case it would be, well, one parent, perhaps the parent you represent, believes the child is transgender, wants to help them transition, wants to get medical advice, and then the other parent is strictly opposed to that. How do you approach that as the lawyers?
A lot of times the lawyers are going to look to a lot of the experts. And similar cases and other cases, for example, it may come to one parent advocating more more of a natural based approach to medicine as opposed to your conventional medicine. So you're going to look at a lot of the issues at hand, what the experts have to say about this. In the transgender case, I think there's going to have to we'll have to look at what the experts are saying, how often they've interviewed the child, how strong these views are to change their gender, and how consistent and reliable they will be.
Have you seen cases where the parents seem to fight for things they want or try to make decisions based not actually on the interest of the child, but more about their anger toward the other parent?
Of course, and a lot of times the custody decisions aren't about necessarily the real, and I call quote-unquote real, major decisions. It's more one parent trying to exert control over the other parent, and it's kind of masqueraded in the sense that it's a custodial issue. Yet, when you start digging below the surface, it's more of a control thing than anything.
That's really interesting. This study having to do with trans kids in family law, it's being done at Western. It's going to be 2 phases. The first will look at existing case law to see how judges have dealt with past cases. Second, we'll try to create a framework that outlines best practices for judges. I guess, more information, more training, Rick, can never be a bad thing.
I think it's a great study. Anything that gives guidance, and especially in this case here, if it allows us to identify things that won't normally be looked at, and for judges and lawyers to be sensitive to, I think it's a great decision. So.
All right, and have you? And you have not had cases like this yourself. Have you heard of any?
I've come across them when I'm reviewing case law, and there's literally a handful of cases in this area. So it's an emerging area, and the cases are coming up in the last few years. But I think that's just in line with the issue of transgender issues becoming more of a public discourse.
Sure.
Most recently, so.
Always appreciate your insight, Rick Patika. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you for having me, Barb.
All right, Rick Patika, associate at Shulman Family Law. So to continue on with this, when we come back, we're going to tell you a story about Charlize Theron and what she is going through with one of her kids. And we're going to ask you, what would you do if your kid came to you at the age of 3 and said, I'm not a boy, I'm a girl. And the kid was born a boy. What would you do? 416-872-1010. We'll tell you more when the night side continues. It's 9:15. NewsTalk 1010. NewsTalk 1010. NewsTalk 1010. NewsTalk 1010. NewsTalk 1010. NewsTalk